Hey, Bible lovers, welcome to part two of my interview with Thomas Fleisch with the Cromwell Leather Group. One thing I noticed immediately about Cromwell Leather with the samples that they sent me was the beautiful grain patterns. They look so perfect, even in some of their natural grains. So I asked Thomas, hey, how do you all get these wonderful, beautiful grain patterns? Check out his answer. You have natural grain
Right.
and you have stamped grain.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that and how the stamped grain, we know how the natural grain works. It's natural to the animal, but when we were talking kind of off camera earlier, you mentioned some expectations of grain and consistency. So tell us about that.
Right, right. So I'd like to differentiate into two categories, and this may be anticipating another question you're going to ask, because we make two product categories for Bibles. One is bonded leather, which is a form of recycled leather, and the other is our genuine leather, and that is genuine cowhide. So we can come back to what is bonded leather and so forth, but on the cowhide, the natural grain of the cowhide is quite smooth, right? And you have some pieces there, and it also has some variation, right?
Mhm.
If you take a whole hide and you look at the backbone area, the grain pattern characteristic is different than in the belly area and different in the neck area. The neck area, where the animal feeds and raises and lowers its head, will have certain wrinkles. We call them neck wrinkles, and they're beautiful, but they look different than the belly area, and which looks different again from the backbone area. So when we supply our Cromwell genuine leather, the cowhide, one version is called Montana, and that is not at all embossed or stamped with a grain, a plate in it. So you will get very smooth, natural leather, a beautiful feel, but you'll get variation. And this is a matter of taste. Some consumers or publishers want all the books to look essentially the same.
Mhm.
They then opt for the stamp pattern, which is not the natural, but it's essentially embossed and then quite uniform. If
Mhm.
they want the natural one, then they have to know that each Bible will be different. And my colleague, Margaret Zolkowski, who sometimes we call the leather Bible lady because she's so expert in this field, points out to the publishers when we talk about this and says, we only want to supply that, not if you just accept it. Really, you have to want that variation. And that variation is part of the natural beauty, and every Bible will be different. And you'll be able to recognize yours because it has this wrinkle here, has this pattern there. And so they've come to appreciate it and say, no, 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 if when we're ordering leather, we want that variation. That doesn't mean that they want low quality leather with lots of scars and scratches and tick bites that might come from a tropical area. That's not acceptable. When you see those little pieces of paper that come and say, oh, on your handbag, these scars and scratches are a natural form of cattle hide, they're probably not so much. They're from barbed wire, could even be part of a brand. So we only use outstanding European cattle where there is no barbed wire, there's no branding. They use ear tags, and the animals have been kept very well, which is a whole nother subject. But the natural grain variation is inherent in that leather, which is called Montana, and that's the one that is not embossed or stamped.
Yeah, and I noticed that with this is there is no scarring. It is absolutely smooth. The grain is absolutely beautiful. It shoots all over the place, so it does have that variation. And I am, like many Bible aficionados, I am an appreciator of well-placed scars, but sometimes when you're cranking out, 2,000, 3,000 Bibles, you put them in the most inconvenient places and they look rather unattractive. And there is no risk of that here, to where
Right.
it's going to look beautiful from cover to cover. Because I noticed that when I got this, I was like, there is not a scar or a flaw on this anywhere. And I was wondering, so I'm glad you answered that question.
That's right. We select for that purpose. You made an interesting comment about the grain. You've probably seen this when you think of the leather belt or shoe that you've bought in the past. We can make leather absolutely smooth. That's not really our intention here. We actually accentuate the grain by a process called milling, but milling is just another word for tumbling. So one of the later stage processes in making our Montana leather is that we tumble it in a large drum. And that actually highlights and brings out that grain character that you like. It's almost like a little pebble effect. It still varies, but we're not aiming for the dead smooth.
Right. That was kind of what was leading to my other question as far as stamping goes, is I'm assuming that it starts out smooth.
That's right.
So you sort of already explained how you tumble it to get the grain to kind of accentuate.
Right.
But what this reminds me of, and this is, I don't know if they can see this on camera, it's a really super pebbly, beautiful, beautiful grain right there. This is your Seville cowhide. And then this one has like a little bit of a tighter, smaller pebbles, and this is the Tosca.
Right.
And what this reminds me of is there are two types of people when it comes to their kitchen countertops. There are those that absolutely love the variation. They love the fact that it's not repeated. And then there are those that want to see that consistent, perfect, because we have granite countertops, and there's a couple of parts in it I'm going to admit I don't like.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do about it because it's natural. And you just kind of have to, well, you accept it because, well, this is the price of natural. Where stamped, you don't have that problem because it's going to be perfect and uniform every time. So how do you stamp it?
It's not necessarily a better or worse in the sense that, it's a matter of taste, right? You want it more uniform or you like that look. But you're right also in that we take basically the leather is very similar to the smooth one. It's the natural Montana. And then we stamp, or we call it emboss, with the embossing machine, that grain. And what it is it's a large machine with a huge amount of pressure that has an engraved plate inserted into it. And one engraving, for example, is the Seville that you alluded to, and the other engraving is Tosca, and we have other engravings. And then the plate is lowered, and with a large amount of pressure and dwell. It's not like a fast roller, because we're actually forming that grain with heat, pressure, and dwell. The material, the leather or bonded leather, is embossed permanently with that pattern, with that stamping pattern.
Well, I hope that was insightful and helpful. And now maybe you have a better idea of how many of the leathers that we see, especially Cromwell leather, gets the grains that they have. I want to thank Thomas for taking the time to answer this question, and check out tomorrow's portion where we talk about how bonded leather is made. God bless you. Keep calm. Jesus on.